FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. And, well, if you visited any major city in America recently, you're probably aware that there is a homeless crisis. It's a crisis for the people who are homeless, and it's a crisis for the law-abiding people who have to put up with this situation, this state of affairs. It's happening in LA, happening in San Francisco, in Las Vegas. They just made it a crime to sleep on the sidewalk. That's punishable by a fine of $1,000. I don't know where that fine's coming from or how it's going to be paid, but the fact is something needs to be done. And in Texas, in Austin, where our next guest harkens from, the governor has put his foot down. Recently, the Austin City Council legalized sleeping just about any place you want in any sidewalk or street. People are outraged. The governor is outraged, and he said, no mas. Well, what's your feeling about homeless? How do we solve it? Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, or put your comments down in the comments section of our YouTube channel or on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Well, Dr. Huber, you've been with us many times. We talked about this very thing, and I said, doesn't the governor have the right to intervene here? Because the Austin City Council has just legalized sleeping on the sidewalk in virtually any area of the city of Austin, and the police are left just kind of observing the situation.
Well, does the governor have a right to interact and step in to local authority? And it's kind of funny because Austin is our state capital and we have our Capitol building right here. This all started this summer when the mayor decided to unilaterally lift city ordinances, did not put it up for a vote, that type of thing. And less than 3 months after he did that, we are inundated with multiple excess thousands of homeless that we did not have before. And it's kind of interesting, that he did this, and immediately, the city pays for him to go to San Francisco for 2 weeks to find out what to do to solve the homeless problem. He comes back with purple trash bags to give to the homeless people so they can keep themselves clean. Of course, they didn't utilize them. I was surprised to that. I mean, come on, who wouldn't take care of their own trash and everything else? And then, I have a business that my practice, along with several other people's practices, is on a pretty busy intersection. And our foot traffic has diminished significantly since all this happened because, lo and behold, right there in that intersection, there's a huge encampment now. And I've gone over there and talked to these people, and it's interesting how they talk about how, wherever they're from, whether it's Oregon or Wyoming or New York State, how their local constabulary give them an option to be, detained in their local jail for several days, or here's a bus ticket to Austin. And what do? They came to Austin instead.
What a shock.
So, big shocker. And it's kind of bizarre that they can sit there, defecate, urinate right there on the sidewalk. In some cases, they've done it in front of kids for the bus stop, at a bus stop.
Right.
I myself had objects hurled at the cars at an intersection stopped by some of these people. It's definitely creating a problem. And we start looking at homelessness, there's a lot of different things going on there. It's not like every one of these people has mental health issues. It's not like every one of them is a drug addict. Yet when the state did come in this past week and cleaned everything up, they talked about and showed the numerous piles of drug paraphernalia that were cleaned up by the Texas Department of Transportation. And it's funny, they went through and the city council sent people out to the intersections that these people were going to be at and told them like the day before, hey, get ready, they're going to come through in your section. It's like they're protecting these individuals. Because if I had drug paraphernalia, what would happen is the police would step in and they would arrest me for having drug paraphernalia, and I would have to deal with the normal court situations for that. And I think there's a lot of other things going on, because it's really interesting too, because where the mayor actually lives, there's no the way the ordinances is, nobody can camp out around the guy's apartment building. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, good enough for me, but for thee, but not for me. And that's just typical of all of this. So one thing is that for the homeless people, and I think a large portion, clearly a majority, are mentally ill, drug addicted, alcoholic. I mean, you've worked with them before, you know this.
Yes.
And these people are dysfunctional. And right now, the only way you can put them in a facility, involuntarily commit, is if they're an imminent danger to themselves or to others. What could be a standard less than that? But you don't want to just take people off the street and throw them into mental hospitals without some basis. What would be a standard less than that we can live with?
Well, and that's the tough thing, because I am very much a supporter of our Bill of Rights, and I don't want to violate any of that, whether it's freedom of speech, the right to incriminate yourself, the right to own weapons, firearms. Mm-hmm. I'm very concerned with protecting our constitutional rights. And we've talked about this at different levels within city government, state government. And one of the things that I compare it to is oftentimes, whether they're mentally ill or not, homeless people get charged with criminal trespassing. And that's a long process, because it gets to a certain point where they finally, because they just want to write you a ticket for criminal trespassing, have you come pay for it. But of course, they're homeless. They don't have the money. So all of a sudden there's a warrant out for their arrest. And then, it's not all of a sudden, it's a process of months. And then they have to go and get detained or interface with a police officer again for them to find out that this is a person they're looking for, because they don't have an established residence and that type of stuff. And then they get pulled in before the court, and they have the right to defend themselves. And the public attorneys oftentimes don't have a good interaction with them. And so they call somebody like me to come in. And at that point, I say they're not competent to stand trial. Okay, so now you've got this whole issue of competency. And the typical process then is you send them to court, or not to court, to the state hospital to regain competency. Mm-hmm. And, at this point, they're now in the state hospital against their will, but because of criminal proceedings that are going on, we're trying to get them to regain competency. Now, the way that the laws are here in Texas, if they approach the maximum sentence that they would have incurred from the criminal trespassing, and they still haven't been deemed competent, the state has to let them go, and they walk out the front door of the state hospital. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a respite for about 6 months, roughly.
Right.
Oftentimes, they go back and they tell the judge, hey, he's not taking his medication. If he would take his medication, he would be restorable. Otherwise, he's not. The judge passes an order and says that the person has to take their medication. If the guy gets stabilized on medication and he goes before the judge, but Your Honor, I don't want to take my medication, and I'm fully aware of the consequences. So the judge then lets him release himself from medication, because we do have a right to accept or refuse medical treatment in this country. Mm-hmm. Because at that point he's of sound mind, and the whole cycle starts all over again.
Yeah. So we have to be able to forcibly medicate these people, because look, homelessness is a threat to the individual. Just being homeless should be construed as an imminent peril to the homeless person. And if they're not mentally ill, then we got to do something about that. And if they are, then we need to do something about that. Back in the 50s, there were 550,000 people involuntarily committed in the United States. And I'm not saying that was the best solution, but it did in a lot of these people, protect them. The conditions in these state institutions were just beyond horrible. They were medieval torture chambers, a lot of them. And then the whole 60s and 70s, we had this deinstitutionalization movement, and people basically have a constitutional right to be homeless and to do drugs and whatever. Well, what about the people who live and are subjected to the homeless antisocial behavior? They have rights too. So the balance is way out of whack. Something's got to be done to take these people off the streets and committed and in a humane way. But there seems to be no political will to do this.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Oren Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Oren is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits, and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Oren's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Oren's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Oren trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orenresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Well, it's a touchy thing. And you said it, it is imminent threat of harm to self or others. And what is imminent? And I've walked into a courtroom where I had a judge say, is he going to kill himself right now? And then I've had another judge say, well, is he going to kill himself or somebody else within the next 2 weeks? I've had another judge say within the next 24 hours. So that's open for interpretation to whatever, judiciary issue or branch or person that's running the show at that point.
Yeah.
So, how do we better define that? It's a very tough issue. Certain mental health issues have bigger, more reactive responses from the individual than others. The severity, regardless of the diagnosis, is also something that has to be looked at. But then, there are people out there who absolutely, I've talked to them, that they don't demonstrate any mental health diagnosis per se, other than they just don't want to be a part of mainstream society. They don't want to be under the rules of society for whatever reason. They're running from alimony. They're running from child support. They have they're using an alias, and they have crimes that they're wanted for in other states, or they purely just truly don't want to be part of the system. So they're kind of working it under wraps. And is it healthy? I wager to say it's not for most people. I know a lot of these people. I'm sitting there watching them, and they're in huge tents that like how do they get enough money standing there in a corner asking for donations? At the same time, I'm sitting here watching on certain social media, people showing pictures right around the corner from my office, and they refuse to give somebody money, and there's a big rock going through their front windshield, and their windshield gets caved in. That's a threat to others. That's definitely a serious situation. But then there's criminal acts at that point. So, now, where's the police to enforce that? How do we track those people down? This is a very complex
We can
issue.
prevent it. It can be prevented in the first place. Why not have a standard that such and such person is unable to care for themselves, and thereby presents a threat to themselves, maybe not imminent, but they're incapable of functioning in a self-protective, or I don't want to say productive, because there are people who, that standard, you don't want it to be so low that anybody gets locked up, but it's got to be more than just imminent harm or imminent threat. If you're a drug addict living on the street, why shouldn't that person be committed? And if a person is schizophrenic and their condition is being controlled by medication, why should you allow them to be in a situation where they can stop taking that medication and wind up back on the street? Isn't forcible medication in that instance the more humane option?
Not necessarily, and that's the conundrum. There are some huge side effects from a lot of these medications. We may have somebody who has delusions, grandiosity, think they're the next in line to take over the kingdom of Great Britain, and they're generally just peaceable people who are trying to get by, one day at a time. Now you give them these antipsychotics and they end up, gaining 40, 50 pounds a year. And within 2 years are diabetic. And now they have a whole nother medical because of the medication that's supposed to fix their mental health issues. And if the person was in a place where they had money to afford things, we would just consider them eccentric and let them go about their lives because they're not hurting anybody. So, what's the line? It's very rough. I know, having worked in different states and dealt with mental illness, there's different things. And here in Texas, in Austin, we have these homeless shelters, but the homeless people don't like them because they do things like you can't come in drunk, you can't do drugs, and you can't. We don't want you having sex with everybody in front of the whole shelter and things like that. So they're choosing in a lot of ways, and the city council is trying to create some system where we can build huge new shelters and house more people, and that's not the answer either because they're not using the ones we have, except for like the night we just had last night where it got down to the low 20s and after a day full of rain and there's ice everywhere, and they go into the shelters because they're warm.
Hey, and let's not forget, like you mentioned before, it becomes a law enforcement issue, and to get them off the street when it gets that cold, they'll arrest them. 25% of the people in our jails and prisons are effectively mentally ill. And
at least,
let's just leave it at that. 25% is pretty staggering. We're paying billions of dollars a year to warehouse them anyway. And it's inevitable that most homeless people will become a law enforcement problem. Either they're shoplifting, threatening people, menacing, whatever. And eventually they're going to wind up getting locked up. And the criminal justice system really is the last place they should be. You know what it is, Dr. Huber? We're paying for these people anyway. They're costing in San Francisco a homeless person $45,000 a year. Same in Seattle. I'll bet it's a little bit less costly in Austin, but not that much. So
not that much.
Yeah, doesn't it make more sense to institutionalize where it's going to cost $40,000 or $50,000 a year? And let's do like an interim step, maybe not a full-blown mental hospital facility, but somewhere between a combination of a homeless shelter and a mental hospital. Maybe there's a midway point there where people can have a safe place to live, whether they want it or not, and get some type of treatment, but not full-blown, mental health facility.
And there's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere. But at the same time, I don't need my city council or any local jurisdiction going through and making it, like an example we have in San Francisco is it's against the law if you walk your dog, let them defecate on the sidewalk and don't pick it up. It's like a $450 fine. But if you're a human being, you can defecate right next to that dog and the police can watch you do it and there's nothing they can do to you.
Right.
Because the city council has passed the city ordinance that allows humans to defecate and urinate right there on the sidewalk. And now they spend something like $35 million a year cleaning up human feces annually in San Francisco. That's a problem. They could probably spend that $35 million a year and get some sort of a communal housing where people register or whatever and have maybe even a temporary mailing address. So maybe if they wanted to get a job, they could have that address to get a job. But also have some sort of a bed to sleep in that has some accommodations there for them, and a bathroom and a place for them to shower. And now we don't have to clean up after all these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we got to do it because allowing antisocial behavior to take place really harms everybody, especially society. Absolutely. And let's do something here. Let's stop this madness because things have clearly gotten much worse Now, like we said, the rights of the person to receive involuntary treatment, well, there has to be a point where maybe the first or second time they wind up back on the street, not so bad, we are patient. But the third time on, then, all right, we know the side effects are bad, but the side effects of homelessness are even worse. And we just can't allow you to live on the street. Well, it is a complicated problem, but it's complicated more by ridiculous city councils like the Austin City Council decriminalizing all sorts of deviant behavior and basically allowing these people to run amok. And the first duty of government is to protect its citizens, its law-abiding citizens, from its non-law-abiding citizens. And clearly, Austin's city council is failing miserably at that, as are most major cities in the country. Hey, Dr. Huber, people want to find out more about you, read your work. Where is the best place to find you these days?
mainstreammentalhealth.org or drpsycho.org. That's drpsycho.org.
All right. I like Dr. Psycho better, but either one will take you there. That's a great URL. Hey, questions or comments for the good doctor? Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Go over to the website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Leave your comments there. Leave your comments on YouTube. Please subscribe, like, and share wherever you're hearing this show now. It really makes a big difference with your help. And the Twitter feed's at Kerry Lutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. Dr. Huber, I'm sure we'll be talking more about this subject in the coming weeks and months ahead. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.